Wearables are going way beyond traditional biometric and physical tracking. This next presenter will share how their innovation is tackling some serious and frustrating conditions that children and seniors alike are faced with. Welcome Chairman, CEO of GoGo Band, and CEO of GoGo Band to the stage, John Coble.
Thank you, Jill, for the warm introduction. Good afternoon. I hear the appetizers and drinks kind of selling in the back there. They'll be coming here soon. Last year, I was sitting right there, where one of you are right there in the middle. And we feel very honored that Jill has asked us to share our story about how we're using artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analytics, and data from biometric wearables to manage chronic health conditions in people. Our first big breakthrough is treating and managing the #1 chronic health condition in children, which, when you ask somebody what that is, most people say ADHD, diabetes, or asthma. In fact, it's pediatric enuresis, which is more commonly known as bedwetting. And it impacts about 8.5 million children, 1 out of 5 kids. And it's a pretty tough condition for a child to have. And if your parents, there's a genetic link. If your mom or dad was a bedwetter, there's a 50% chance that you will be a bedwetter. If both of your parents were bedwetters, there's an 80% chance that you also will be a bedwetter. And it can be devastating if left untreated. If you look at the research, the #1 most predictive variable for childhood suicide is pediatric enuresis. And not many people know that. It's also a leading indicator for depression, social isolation, bullying at the school, and physical abuse, both by your peer groups and, yes, even your families. So if you're a child with bedwetting issues and you get into your teen years, you can have one of these symptoms, but most bedwetters have a multiplicative array, what we call our constellation of pain, and it can be really, really devastating. Current treatment options. We call it the 3Ds. You can do drugs, you can do diapers, or you can do what we call dumb bed pad alarms. Drugs and diapers only mask the problem. And dumb bed pad alarms uses technology that was developed in the 1930s. And only 1 out of 4 children really receive any benefit from it. You can spend thousands of dollars and go to an enuretic clinic where you will be provided with counseling, but the basic mode of treatment are drugs and dumb bed pad alarms. We're going to change that. The question you might ask is, why does a child wet the bed? That bladder full signal that you and I recognize, and I bet you probably at least a quarter of us in here probably need to go to the bathroom right now. That signal that you recognize is never sensed by that child. In effect, it's lost. So that neural pathway from the bladder to the brain is the last neural pathway to develop in a child, and so it's lost. And so when it sends that signal to the brain and you don't recognize it, the bladder's a very unique organ. It sends a secondary signal to the autonomic system at the base of the spine, which will cause an automatic voiding of that urine. And again, that neural pathway is a behaviorally conditioned neural pathway. You have to learn how to control your bladder, particularly at night. It's like learning how to ride a bike, throw a baseball, walk or talk. One of the secrets that we've uncovered is and LaBeouf mentioned it earlier, heart rate variability. And that's the period, the time difference between beat to beat. So if your heart rate is 60 beats a minute, it's not going like a metronome every second. The period between beats is really dynamic. And as the bladder is filling at night, And if you think about night, the biometric pattern of the child is like a clear Canadian lake, smooth and clear. And when that bladder starts firing, particularly to the central nervous system and then to the autonomic nervous system, we can detect that. And heart rate variability is composed of both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system excites the heart, the parasympathetic system decreases the heart rate. And they're basically like two hands on a wheel, constantly in opposition, trying to change and control that heart rate. And HRV encodes, we call it the Rosetta Stone, and we've been able to isolate it to the bladder. So what we do is we take that one key biometric along with motion, and we're able to determine when that child's bladder is full and they are about to void. But it's a lot more complex. We were hoping we would find one bladder full model that would work across the population. We very quickly realized that every child's bladder full pattern is different. So our system has to build in real time a personalized predictive model for every child on our system. The secondary complexity is that as you start conditioning and that child begins to recognize that bladder full signal, they are able to begin to suppress that bladder from voiding, to say relax, so that they can, like you and I, can sleep through the whole night without having wetting the bed or going to the bathroom. So our models, our AI ML predictive engine, we call it IPASS, has to be able to adapt every single day to the changing stair-step function of that biometric telemetry that's all tied to that bladder being full. Also, we have multiple models running concurrently, simultaneously, almost in a race condition, so that it's not just one single model that's out there trying to predict when that child is going to void, but it's a series of models running concurrently. And finally, the other complexity that we had to overcome is that weaning. Your body will become somewhat dependent upon that alarm. So in order, as that behavioral conditioning is taking place, we have to develop a weaning protocol to basically, and it's all AI ML driven, wean that child off of our go-go band system intelligently so that they finally have complete control of their bladder. What our system comprises, it comes in a nice box. It's a wearable device. We use the Valencell sensor, best of breed. It gives us EKG-like biometric telemetry. It could be used 10 to 12-hour duty cycles. We also needed a moisture sensor that's attached to the front of, and the band is worn on the calf. A moisture sensor on the front of the pajamas that timestamps when they pee, that we can then backtrack to develop the model. It's all then routed through a tablet that sits on the child's bedside that not only routes the data to the cloud, but also alarms at the bedside. And we're built on Google's cloud. Again, a high secure, highly scalable, really ready fit for AI, ML type applications like ourselves. So we not only alarm at the bedside, because deep sleep is a big issue with bedwetting or enuresis, but we also alarm to the parent app and provide that parent with detailed coaching. So in effect, what is happening every night is that as the bladder is filling, we are tracking all these key biometrics. And when that bladder is just about to be released, we're able to notify both through the tablet at the bedside as well as to the parent on the app that that child is about to wet the bed. The impact. One of the key things that we're finding is that this is kid cool friendly tech. The kid loves it. It's not a dumb bed pad alarm that alarms once you've wet the bed and you feel like a failure. We actually keep that kid dry, and by alarming when that bladder full signal is taking place, we condition deeper and faster than anything out there in the market. Through our parent app, we're involving the parent for the first time in the treatment of this condition. We also have the weaning protocol because there's a significant 50% relapse with the dumb bed pad alarms, dramatically reducing relapse. I like this graph a lot. Before we came to the show, we actually analyzed the most recent 30 children, a cohort of 30 children, and within a little more than 2 months, they are achieving an 80% dry rate of 2 weeks within a little more than 2 months. But what this graph shows is kids that were wetting 7 days a week, 2 to 4 times a night, and had been undergoing significant, intensive years' worth of treatment by pediatric urologists in clinical hospitals, and never had a dry night in their life. Within 30 days of being in what we call our predictive mode, again, 10 days of training with a moisture sensor is marking the times in which they are wetting the bed, and then we backtrack and build a model, deploy it, and get in predictive mode. After 30 days, these kids who had never had a dry night are 58% dry. And within 60 days, they are beginning to wake up on their own, what we call a controlled wet, that they actually are waking up to their own bladder full signal, and they're about 90%, 89% dry. So the question you might be asking is, we launched in a very controlled release, came out of stealth mode about 6 months ago. We're going to be launching nationally later this year, but can this technology be applied to other chronic health conditions? And the answer is yes. Specifically, geriatric incontinence is one that I have a deep passion for, my mom and dad, and we know that this technology can be applied to geriatric incontinence, asthmatic attacks, depression, and anxiety. So we look forward to some good news over the coming year, and thank you very much.